Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a crazy story out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kalamazoo is one of those towns that's just fun to say. Say it with me, Kalamazoo. WWMT reports the story. Will and Philip both told me about it. And we don't have all the answers. And that's what makes it such a crazy story, because there's one big question in the middle of this. Kalamazoo police will not say why a family's home was torn down after a police standoff. This all happened in a period of a couple days, very, very recently. Tricia McCauley wrote it for WWMT. But a Kalamazoo mother and her 5 children are now homeless after police demolished their house during and after a standoff. Didn't get completely demolished during the standoff, but afterwards, the police and the Public Works Department finished the job. Police said a suspect took over the family's house and barricaded himself inside the home for 16 hours. And in the process, the man was deceased. He became deceased after the police took action against him. And so he was deceased. And community members then watched as the next day, the family's home was torn down. So the standoff was Monday. The house was torn down on Tuesday. And it all happened rather quickly. And this is happening in the Edison neighborhood on Washington Avenue in Kalamazoo. Neighbors said they wondered why the family, who had nothing to do with the standoff, had to lose everything in the process. The Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety won't say why the home was destroyed. So, standoff, because a guy runs into a house, barricades himself inside the house. He's got nothing to do with that family. It's a random house, okay? So that just happened that way. And so he's in there for 16 hours. He winds up passing away in there. And the house is damaged in the process. But the very next day, they decide to destroy the home. Now, the man who passed away in the house, 35-year-old Alex Rawls, took over the home on Washington Avenue early Monday morning. Investigators said the man was wanted for an assault with intent to murder, for an incident that took place with his ex-girlfriend's sister back on November 1st. He had prior domestic violence convictions, and he was also accused of attacking his ex-girlfriend, sending her to the hospital. So there were some issues here. There's no question that the man was wanted by the police. He barricaded himself inside a house, and violence ensued, and the man passed away. The question, of course, that we're worried about most here is what happened with the house. So during the standoff, police said that the man inside the house fired at the officers, and then the officers returned fire, and that is why the man is now deceased. Then it turns out that during part of the standoff, they did knock part of the house down. So part of the house got knocked down, but the very next day, they tore it down completely. Now, the woman who lived there didn't own the house. She was renting the house. She was there with her 5 children who were aged 4 to 17 years old. And the landlord said that he was renting the house to them. And friends of the family said that they did find the family temporary housing. They are in need of personal care items, clothing, and food. But the bigger question is, couldn't they have stopped the complete demolition and at least let these people get some of the stuff from the house, retrieve some of the stuff? Because apparently the people who saw the house getting finished off were of the mind that there was still stuff you could have gotten out of the house if you had just been careful about it. Kalamazoo police are not saying why the house had to be demolished in the standoff or why the family could not go into the home to collect any of their belongings after the standoff. And so, again, it's one of those things. And a lot of times in life, people err on the side of caution. They err on the side of caution. So let's all be really, really careful here. But we've all seen, I'm assuming, buildings that have been knocked over, that have partly fallen over. And I can tell you as a young man, child, teenager, all of my years of spending time in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and just exploring up there, way up north in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, that you will occasionally come across an old building, a ghost town, things out in the woods, shacks and so on. And I can tell you that I have climbed around inside buildings that are half fallen over many times. I've gone into buildings before where the walls were still there, but once you got inside, the floor was gone. Where it went, I don't know. Over periods of time, these things disappear. I've gone into buildings where you got inside and the roof was gone and there was still stuff in the building. And, the thing about this is that, again, it's a question of caution, most likely. So I suspect that what happened was that during the standoff, the house got damaged. And after the standoff, of course, the scene becomes a crime scene. So they're going to investigate the crime scene. I understand that also. And then when they're done with the investigation, somebody goes, well, the house is unsafe, level it. But the question I have, again, is if the house was a crime scene and they're done investigating the crime scene, couldn't you pause for just a split second and say, is there stuff in this house that can be retrieved safely? And perhaps we can sit down and talk about this for just a split second before we just say, no, the house is unsafe, level the whole thing. Level the whole thing. So, again, I wasn't there. I didn't see the house. I'm not a structural engineer, nor I'm not an architect, okay? So it's quite possible that the house was just teetering, was about to become just a pile of rubble. That's possible. That's possible. But again, there were a lot of people who apparently thought that someone could have gone inside the house and retrieved things from within the house. And if you think about the stuff that's in your house, I'm sure you know that you might have valuables in there. You might know where they are, right? So if you know that the valuables are in there where they are, presumably, you'd think about, can I go in and get them? But there's also other stuff in your house that isn't of value to anybody else, but it's of value to you, if for no other reason, then it's going to be a pain in the rear end for you to replace it. Birth certificates, bank information, bank books, that kind of stuff. There's stuff in there that you're going to have to go out and replace. And so that's the issue. So I feel very sorry for the people here who are at the center of this because it wasn't their fault. It was not their fault. They're just minding their own business. And I presume that the kids are probably at school and the mom is probably at work, although one of the children is aged 4, so maybe preschool or something. But a guy on the run, on the lam, as they say, decides to barricade himself inside their house. And then their house gets damaged in the process. And then when they find out about all this, they say, oh, by the way, the house is now so damaged, we're just going to level it. And they demolish the house. So people do have questions, and I think they're valid questions. But it's unfortunate. It's a crazy story. And this is the kind of story, we did a story not too long ago on this channel about the guy who was being chased for shoplifting. And he barricaded inside a house, I believe in Colorado. And a SWAT team got involved and started using like grenades and stuff and managed to blast this house to smithereens. And eventually they extracted the guy. But the house was destroyed. And that one was destroyed during the process of trying to get at this guy inside the house. Here the house was partially destroyed. Then, of course, there's no danger because the guy's gone. Then they level the house. So it's a slightly different kind of thing that makes you wonder about this. But it's a crazy story from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Tricia and Macaulay wrote it. Will and Philip both sent it. Thanks a lot, guys. Kalamazoo police tight-lipped about why family's home was torn down after police standoff. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Some pursue happiness, others create it.